Well, hello Internet. It's been a week since I got home, since I finished my trip. I thought it would be appropriate to do an epilogue or a summary or whatever you want to call it. I've got Big Blue sitting behind me. I haven't really moved since I got home with Big Blue. I'm going to do a complete wash down, clean up, a little TLC, long overdue, well deserved. So that's kind of next on my list. It is a very hot July day. Not a bad thing, but just all good here in Minnesota. So quick summary. I traveled 4,550 miles. I covered 10 states, which when I think larger scale, that means I covered 20% of the United States. Sounds a lot more impressive than it is, but states were Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. So that's 10. Several states a couple of times at least, maybe 3 even, depending on kind of the circumstance or the way the route went. I didn't realize on the way from Massachusetts to Maine that we would go through, I guess it's called the Hamptons of New Hampshire. I know that it's kind of like that's something, I guess, back in the 1950s and 60s, all the people that lived in New York City wanted to move to the Hamptons. But anyway, just kind of made me laugh as we're going through there. Overall, in all the miles in 24 days, I only had 2 circumstances where people were behaving, let's say, distractedly and driving badly, which is kind of remarkable to me. The one I described in Bangor, Maine, that was the circumstance where the guy pulled out, but then the cop lit him up and pulled him over for doing exactly what he did that was stupid. The other one was a person that was trying to merge into me on the freeway, and basically she was driving looking at her phone, and it's like, oh my God, seriously. But regardless, you know, I wasn't in any real danger, I'd say, in either of those situations, just the challenge of it. But like I say, people were amazing. Not really any negative experiences to speak of. As far as the actual trip goes, I think I had a total of 1 full day of rain. That one afternoon in Pennsylvania where it had been like 97 degrees and it rained for an hour and a half, the last hour and a half of my ride, and it was like, oh, thank God, you know, it just cooled it down like 15 degrees in a heartbeat, and it was like I didn't care that I was getting rained on. Had a huge rain shower in the middle of Michigan, had a, you know, just, but really it was amazingly good weather. Some days just horribly hot. And then other days, I think I'd mentioned in one of my video episodes, the morning started at like 58 degrees, and by, you know, late in the day it was in the 90s. So just kind of crazy that way, but all good. I was looking at one article, speaking of kind of the distance covered, and there's like the top 5 rides in New England, and it was, let's see, the Kankamangas Highway, I think it's called. I think it's Route 2, dang, what's it called? Was it the Sioux Trail, or no, the Mohawk Trail, sorry, in Massachusetts. The ride up Mount Washington, and then there's the Arcadia National Park, and the loop through there, which was great. The only one I didn't do of those top 5 was one that was down in like Rhode Island and Connecticut, and I just didn't get that far south. I was trying to avoid the cities, which I think on a motorcycle makes sense generally, but in the East Coast they tend to be pretty dense. It's kind of like riding through Chicago on a freeway on a motorcycle. It's like, what's the point? So speaking of which, Big Blue did do 3 water crossings. We did the initial, I think it was day 2, the high-speed ferry across Lake Michigan. That one, I mapped, or I pulled out my Garmin halfway across the lake and saw that we were in the middle of the water, showed my motorcycle on the map going 34 miles an hour, and then we had that very slow speed crossing across Lake Champlain from Fort Ticonderoga on a cable-pulled, I guess, barge ferry. And then the last one was the SS Badger that I did a couple of episodes on. I think it was episodes 16 and 17. There was a much slower, about a 15 mile per hour, or 16 mile an hour, 15 knot, whatever, cruise across Lake Michigan going east to west back over to Wisconsin. So I'm glad I avoided some of the streets and roads and highways that I did avoid. What I found interesting was, had I gone roads only instead of doing the shorter cut across Lake Michigan twice, I'm sure I probably would have been close to 5,000 miles, but whatever. It wasn't about the distance. It was just I think it was the fun of the ride. And obviously too, you could tell, I tried to provide a zen wherever I could, a zen moment, whether it was on the seashore, on Maine, at Niagara Falls, at like the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. Any of those places, I thought, you know, this is sometimes about the zen. Let's, you know, stop and just take a moment, appreciate it, not try to just travel distance for the sake of distance. I'm sure you're kind of hearing we've got some hawks here that like the wetlands near our house, and apparently they just decided they wanted to be very vocal and maybe captured on my video here today. So anyway, hawks in the background. It is what it is. Our cats have learned to be very cautious going out in the yard so they don't get attacked. But other things that I wanted to share with you, a couple of things. One was I met some wonderful and amazing people. I talked about some of them in previous episodes, but it seemed like no matter where I was, maybe it's about being on a motorcycle on a solo adventure. I'm not sure if that's part of it, but people just stop and talk. Sometimes they'd see my license plate and couldn't believe that I was doing this trip by myself on two wheels. I mean, it was an adventure, so it kind of was a lot to talk about. Had a lot of fun, and it was, you know, restaurants just randomly, or I'd, you know, like end of the day, I'd go to the hotel bar and I end up talking to people, and, you know, gas stations, didn't matter. I just had a wonderful time connecting with other humans and just having conversations. Switching gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about Big Blue and kind of the tech and some of the things that I learned on this trip and what I might do differently. One is that I think I'm definitely going to put my taller windscreen back on Big Blue. The one that's on there is the stock windscreen, and what I found is on the freeway at 75, you just get buffeted a lot. You know, just wind, and it kind of wears you out because it's hitting you even at maximum height. It's still buffeting you around the shoulders and around the neck and the head, and you know, with a helmet on, it gets old. I mean, I could feel the wear and tear on my body, on my upper body from that. So I do have an alternative windscreen. I was hesitant to put it on because it doesn't allow as much air over. So at its lowest height, this other windscreen is at the maximum height of the one that's on Big Blue. So the trade-off is you don't get quite as much air flowing over to cool you, but I think I'll be okay once it's past the worst of summer here. I'm not planning any long trips this year, but just even for a day ride, I think it'd be nicer to have a little bit of a break from that buffeting. The other thing that I noticed, and just as a commentary, I guess, on the technology, I did invest in this guy here, my Garmin Zumo, and the previous Garmin that I had was a Nuvi 55 that was about 10 or 11 years old. And if you think about the difference between your phone, whether it's an Android or an iPhone or whatever, from 10 years ago to today, it's the kind of thing like, you know, the old one, you could barely see the screen in bright sunlight. It wasn't really weatherproof very much. Well, it wasn't really designed for, you know, motorcycle use, but and it was clunky. You know, it was difficult to use sometimes. Whereas this Zumo, what I love about it, and I suppose actually this is the Zumo XT, what's cool is it has the same kind of resolution as a current iPhone has, so extremely bright, very high res, can see it even in the brightest sunlight. And the best part was mapping. You could map right on the Garmin much easier, I found, than even using Garmin's, what do they call, Basecamp, I think is their web interface software. So I enjoyed creating routes. So I had actually a route saved, I mean, not too far in advance, but sometimes it'd be a day or two ahead, where it's like, okay, I was in Vermont and I know I wanted to go see such and such. So I would initially maybe plot a route. Sometimes so I'd have my start, my end points, and I'd add waypoints. I had some routes where I'd have like 15 waypoints, and I could choose them based on map coordinates, or whether it was like a park, like a national park or a state park, or I could just pull up a map and find it on there and then mark that as a waypoint. So I could do these little side loops. Absolutely great. One of the best tools ever. And sometimes, you know, you can set preferences and it'll map for you. I think I mentioned in a couple of my video episodes, I used Garmin's, I think they call it adventurous routing, which basically chose all these crazy back roads. It was tons of fun. Sometimes I wasn't sure where I was, other than I was heading generally east, west, whatever direction I was hoping to go that day. So it was adventurous. I mean, not to make light of it, but it was actually kind of fun. So it just kind of opened up possibilities. So the Garmin, highly recommend, and this one, the Zumo in particular, is also kind of weather-proofed. I wouldn't throw it in a bucket of water, but you know, riding in the rain, no big deal. You know, it's all good. And I had it set up with a mount on Big Blue, where you just pop it on, pop it off. So if I was, you know, had the bike parked overnight, obviously I wasn't going to leave it on there. It's that opportunistic theft that I was trying to kind of avoid. So that, and then the other cool piece of tech was actually on my Android phone, and I had my phone mounted just left and below my my Zumo. So what was cool, there's an app called Pure Gas, because I like to put non-ox gas in Big Blue and pretty much any of the motorcycles that I've got. And this allowed me to pull up, I think there's like 4,000 stations around the US that are on this app. So I could be at, you know, a intersection somewhere, pull up this app, look at the map, and then see, oh, there's a station 5.2 miles away from me, look at where my route is on my Zumo, on my Garmin, and then plan. Basically what I would do is I would map to it on this Pure Gas app, so that I would follow my Pure Gas app to the gas station, then close it out, and then go back to my original route on my Garmin. There was one time, it was on the day when I was riding to Oneida, New York, and it was raining the whole day. I had pulled over at a gas station to warm up and get some glove liners on and just get out of the rain for a bit. And just for the heck of it, I was only on half a tank. I pulled up the Pure Gas app, and I you know, looked and it said, oh, there's a station 0.0 miles from you. So I accidentally, conveniently picked a station that had non-ethanol gas, so I just filled up while I was there. But that was rare. Usually you had to go, you know, maybe a tenth of a mile or a mile or two out of your way, but it was great. It worked out perfectly to have that app on there. So especially for motorcycle riders, get the Pure Gas app. I think you'd really like it. Even if you're doing day trips, it's nice to be able to find those stations and, you know, put the full 100% fossil fuel gas in your tank instead of the ethanol stuff. Really, I think that's about it. I'm again maybe rambling a bit, but I wanted to just kind of summarize how much fun the trip was. It was the first long trip I've done since since Cohen and I did this trip back 9 years ago when he graduated from high school, and we did about a 3,800 mile trip down to Georgia when my dad was still alive there and living there. And we covered, I think, 15 states. We took about 2 weeks, I think. It was a ton of fun. but this was the longer trip certainly than I've ever taken. I am planning one for next year. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping that I can plan it and pull it off. It would be, let's just say, heading west and then down the west coast and a lot of ways in between, and I think it'll be a very, very fun adventure. Anyway, I would obviously capture a lot of that adventure on video and share it over time here. You know, always just trying to find the zen of things. So with Big Blue behind me, I'm going to kind of close this out and call this adventure 2022 East. I'm going to call it good, and that I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the videos that I've shared, and I'm going to turn the camera around and let you enjoy a little bit of the summertime zen of my front yard, basically. So see you next time around.